It happened in a heartbeat. One moment he was a boy leaning over the railing, curious, small, eyes wide at the sight of something wild. The next, he was gone. A 5-year-old child plummeted 15 feet into the gorilla enclosure at Jersey Zoo. No warning, no time to scream, just the sickening crack of flesh and bone hitting concrete. A hush swept over the crowd, then chaos. People screamed. Parents covered their children's eyes. One woman fainted. Zoo staff radioed for backup. Security gates slammed shut. Cameras started rolling, and somewhere in the distance a siren wailed. But none of it reached him. The boy lay crumpled and silent at the bottom of the moat, face down, limbs twisted. A thin stream of blood traced its way from his scalp into the shallow water. He didn't move. Inside the enclosure, the gorillas stirred. There were 7 in total, but all eyes, human and animal, turned to one figure, a massive silverback. His name was Jambo. Over 400 pounds of pure muscle, fur, and primal instinct. Towering, broad-chested, with deep-set eyes and the power to crush a man's skull with a single blow. He was the dominant male of the troop, the protector, the king of the enclosure. And he had heard the sound. From his perch, Jambo turned. Slowly, intentionally, his gaze settled on the tiny, motionless body sprawled in the moat. He blinked once, then he stood. In the viewing area, people gasped. "He sees him," someone whispered. A man backed away from the glass. "Get that kid out of there." But it was too late. Jambo was moving, down the slope. Toward the boy, one heavy step at a time, his knuckles dragged through the grass, his brow furrowed. His shoulders rolled like waves. There were no bars, no fences between him and the child, just air and gravity. Zookeepers froze. They knew this troop, knew Jambo. But this was uncharted. This wasn't a test. This was a real child, a real body, and a real silverback walking straight for it. The boy didn't move, and Jambo reached him. He stood over the child, a towering wall of black fur, muscle, and sheer wild power. His shadow covered the boy completely. For a moment, everything stopped. Even the birds went quiet. Somewhere, a camera zoomed in, capturing the moment the world would soon never forget. Jambo lowered his head. He sniffed. He reached out one massive hand and gently, so gently, touched the boy's back. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jambo didn't roar, didn't beat his chest, didn't claim dominance. He sat right there, beside the boy, still, watchful. A second gorilla began to approach from the far side of the enclosure. Jambo glanced up, then stood. He moved between the boy and the other gorilla, shielding the child with his body. He didn't attack. He just guarded. And the message was clear. No one touches the boy, not unless Jambo says so. The other gorilla backed away. Up above, zookeepers scrambled for a plan. How do you retrieve a human child from a wild animal without sparking fear? How do you intervene when the only thing keeping that child alive is the very creature you were afraid of? The boy stirred, a twitch, a weak movement, a faint whimper. And still Jambo didn't move. He stayed close, calm, a sentinel in the shadows. The world expected chaos. Jambo gave them stillness. As the boy groaned and shifted in the dust, every muscle in the crowd above tensed. Mothers pulled their children closer. A man dropped his camera. One zookeeper whispered, "He's moving," like it might summon disaster. But the gorilla didn't flinch. Jambo stayed where he was, planted between the child and the rest of the troop. His enormous body crouched low but ready, not for violence, for protection. Because Jambo had made a decision. He wasn't going to harm the boy. He was going to guard him. Another gorilla, a younger male, began inching closer, curious, cautious. A flash of instinct sparked in Jambo's eyes. In a single, deliberate move, he rose and extended one arm sideways. A warning. No sound, no charge, just presence. The younger gorilla paused, looked again at Jambo, then turned away. Above, someone finally breathed again. He's protecting the kid, a woman said, half in awe, half in disbelief. And he was. Jambo turned back to the boy, who had now rolled slightly onto his side. His fingers twitched, his legs spasmed weakly. He was waking up. And this was the moment that terrified everyone. What if he cried? What if he reached out? Would it trigger fear? Would Jambo's instinct shift from guard to threat? Instead, the opposite happened. The boy let out a weak, muffled sob, a sound of confusion and pain, a child hurt and alone in a place no child should ever be. And Jambo leaned closer. He lowered his massive head, pressed his nose gently to the boy's back, then raised his arm, open-palmed, and stroked him. Not roughly, not curiously, gently, carefully, like a father brushing dust off his child's shoulders. The crowd was silent. It was the kind of silence that comes when nature breaks its own rules. The boy whimpered again. Jambo stayed calm, and for nearly 5 minutes, 5 long, delicate, suspended minutes, the two shared a space no one could explain. The distance between species collapsed. This wasn't instinct, this wasn't training, this was something deeper, empathy. But the sanctuary team didn't know how long it would last. They huddled just outside the enclosure wall, radios buzzing, waiting for confirmation. Could they go in? Would the troop react? Could they tranquilize Jambo if needed? One keeper, eyes glued to binoculars, said flatly, "No sudden moves. He's watching everything." And he was, not with fear, not with aggression, with awareness. Jambo's eyes scanned every motion above, every sound, every possible threat to the tiny, wounded human at his feet. And the child had began to cry. A real cry, loud, pained, terrified. His body convulsed. He tried to crawl, weakly, blindly, away from Jambo. The crowd gasped. A few screamed. The zookeepers prepared to intervene, but Jambo didn't react. He stepped backward. Just 2 paces, but they meant everything. He gave the boy space, enough to move, enough to breathe, enough to be rescued. Then he turned his back, not out of disinterest, but as if to say, "He's not mine to hurt. He's yours to help." The boy cried out again, louder this time. His voice echoed off the concrete walls of the enclosure, thin, shaky, human. It cut through the trees, the chatter of startled monkeys, even the murmur of the crowd above. A single, fragile sound of life. And life meant danger, because the gorillas were listening too. From the far side of the habitat, a young female moved toward the noise. Not aggressive, curious, but her size alone posed a risk. Another adolescent followed, intrigued by the motion, the unfamiliar sound of a human child. Jambo's ears twitched. He turned his head just enough to see them. They were approaching the boy. One more step and everything could change. Jambo reacted instantly. He rose to full height, a towering dark wall of muscle and presence. His shoulders heaved once, his chest expanded. But he didn't charge. He didn't roar. He stepped between the boy and the others again. A second warning. A second number. The others paused, ears back. One flicked her tongue nervously, and just like that they backed away, melting into the brush. Jambo remained upright for a long moment, listening, waiting. Then, slowly, he turned back toward the child and walked away. Not far, just far enough to show trust, and just close enough to still protect. Above, the keepers watched with split-second focus. This was the moment. "We've got to go," one of them said. "If we wait too long, we lose him." The rescue team had been preparing for this since the fall. They'd run scenarios, measured distances, planned distraction patterns and escape routes. But none of those scenarios had included a gorilla guarding the boy. That changed everything. "Tranquilizers?" someone offered. "No time," another said. "And if we spook Jambo—" They didn't finish the sentence. Finally they agreed. One ranger would drop into the moat. Quietly, slowly, no sudden movements, no tools, nothing threatening. The rest would be ready to cover him if anything went wrong. The boy was beginning to sit up. His movements were slow, confused. He clutched his head. His knees trembled. He looked around, dazed. And then he saw Jambo. He froze. The massive gorilla stood maybe 10 feet away watching. The boy whimpered. Jambo lowered his head, then looked away, not dismissive, but respectful, as if to say, "I see you. I won't hurt you." That was the moment. A keeper in a khaki vest dropped into the moat, landing in silence. He crept forward, hands up, heart pounding. He didn't look at Jambo. He kept his eyes on the boy. The boy turned, saw help, and began to crawl toward it. It wasn't fast. His body was still reeling from the fall. But he moved, and the ranger met him halfway, arms out, scooping him into a protective hold. Jambo didn't move. He just watched. And when the ranger turned, lifting the boy toward the climbing rope, Jambo backed even farther into the brush, a shadow disappearing into the leaves. "He's letting us go," someone said. "He knows." The boy was hoisted out. He was crying, bleeding, awake, but alive. The crowd above broke into applause, cheers, tears. But down below, no one cheered. The rescuers stood in quiet awe, looking back one last time toward the gorilla who had made this moment possible. Jambo had vanished, not out of fear, out of grace. The boy is safe, but no one is breathing yet. The ranger holds him close, one arm cradling the child's legs, the other shielding his head. Blood trickles from a cut near the boy's ear. His eyes flutter. He's conscious, barely. His small chest rises and falls in uneven bursts. Above the enclosure, zookeepers line the barrier with ropes and stretchers. One man lowers a harness, while another radios for paramedics. The crowd behind the security line is silent. Hundreds of eyes stare through glass and chain link. They're not watching the boy anymore. They're watching Jambo. He stands at the edge of the habitat, half shaded by ferns. He isn't pacing, he isn't grunting, he simply watches. Still, powerful, calm. The ranger signals, the harness tightens. The boy is lifted gently, slowly, feet swinging as he rises out of the moat. The crowd exhales together as his body clears the concrete wall and vanishes behind a safety barrier. Cheers erupt, but down below no one is cheering yet. The ranger climbs up after him. Every second his heart thumps with the unspoken question, would Jambo follow? Would he change? Would something snap now that the child was leaving? But Jambo doesn't move. He remains where he is, head low, chest still, eyes watching until the last rope clears the enclosure. Only then does he turn his back and walk away into the undergrowth. He disappears as silently as he arrived. The boy lies in a hospital bed connected to IVs and monitors. His parents are by his side. Doctors have good news, a fractured skull, bruised ribs, but no internal bleeding. He'll recover. The news reaches the zoo. Staff weep in private. Security teams watch the footage back again and again. But no one can stop talking about Jambo. By nightfall, the footage hits television. Grainy handheld video. A child lying unconscious. A gorilla, massive, looming, approaching from the shadows. It should be a nightmare, but it's not. The voiceover trembles. But what happens next will leave you speechless. The world watches Jambo lower his head, extend his hand, sit beside the boy like a bodyguard, block the other gorillas from coming closer. They see his strength, and then his restraint. And something shifts. The video goes viral before the word viral even exists. People send letters. Phone calls flood the zoo. Religious leaders call it a miracle. Scientists call it interspecies empathy. Parents call it grace. I used to think gorillas were dangerous, one letter reads. Now I think we're the dangerous ones. Children draw pictures of Jambo. Zoos across the world are asked, can gorillas really do that? Experts appear on TV. Yes, they say. They feel more than we ever gave them credit for. The boy recovers, but it's Jambo who changes everything. The media dubs him the gentle giant. A statue is commissioned. School books include his name. Wildlife documentaries replay the footage for decades. He didn't roar. He didn't save with force. He saved with presence, with instinct, patience, and understanding that went far beyond the bars of the enclosure. Back at the Jersey Zoo, Jambo sits on a rock, grooming his arms as children point at him from behind the glass. He looks up once. No expression, no fanfare, just eyes that have seen something and done something most of us never will. He turns, walks back into the trees. Not a hero by his own definition, but the world knows better. Time passed, but the moment never faded. What Jambo did in that enclosure, with no training, no reward, no one watching who could ever explain it to him, became more than a story. It became a turning point for gorillas, for conservation, for the world. The footage aired on every major network. It was translated into dozens of languages. Headlines read, "Gentle Giant Saves Boy's Life." The gorilla who chose kindness. A creature of instinct or something more. Teachers played the tape in classrooms. Scientists replayed it at conferences. For years afterward, when people thought of gorillas, they didn't think of King Kong or violence or fear. They thought of Jambo, a 400-pound silverback who, when faced with vulnerability, responded not with dominance, but with compassion. Levan Merritt, the boy who fell, made a full recovery. He didn't just survive the fall, he survived the headlines, the mythologizing, the global attention. He grew up quietly, respectfully, always remembering that moment as something sacred. "I don't remember much," he said years later, "but I know he didn't hurt me. He protected me." He visited the Jersey Zoo as an adult. He stood at the edge of the enclosure, now redesigned for safety, and stared into the space where it all happened. And he said, "Thank you," not to the staff, to Jambo. When Jambo passed away in 1992, it made international news. Obituaries called him a hero, a peacemaker, a teacher. At the zoo, they built a statue in his honor, life-size, powerful, serene. Children place flowers at his feet. Tour guides tell his story every day. For some visitors, it's the first time they realize gorillas are more than animals. They're family, they're protectors, they're beings with hearts. And every year, new guests stand at that spot and ask, was this where the boy fell? Is this where the gorilla sat? The answer is yes. Right here, a child once lay broken. Right here, a gorilla once chose to protect. And right here, the boundary between species briefly disappeared. Conservation groups cited Jambo's actions in campaigns to protect endangered mountain and lowland gorillas. Donations surged. Wildlife laws tightened. Misconceptions began to erode. People began to ask not what are gorillas capable of, but what do we still not understand about them? And what do they understand about us? Jambo never said a word, but his silence echoed louder than any roar. A quiet morning at Jersey Zoo. Mist clings to the grass. Birds call faintly. A new silverback lounges peacefully under the trees, his breath steady, his troop relaxed. A small boy, not the same one, but another, presses his face against the glass, wide-eyed. The gorilla looks up, their eyes meet. A flash of recognition, not memory, but understanding. A distant echo of something that happened once, long ago, but still alive. The boy grins, the gorilla blinks. And somewhere in the leaves above, wind brushes gently past a bronze statue. Jambo's name etched in stone, his legacy etched in us. If this story changed the way you see animals, share it. Don't let Jambo's quiet act be forgotten. Let it ripple. Let it teach us that sometimes the gentlest strength comes from the ones we fear the most. Subscribe for more true stories of courage, empathy, and connection across worlds. Share Jambo's legacy. Comment below. What would you have expected a 400-pound gorilla to do?